The wind howled across the endless white land, carrying sharp crystals of snow that cut against exposed skin like tiny blades. For most people, the Arctic was nothing but a frozen desert, a place too cold, too quiet, and too lonely. But for scientists and explorers, it was a place of secrets. The Earth still held mysteries under its ice, and some people believed that the greatest discoveries had not yet been found. In one corner of this endless wilderness stood Station Argus, a lonely research base with metal walls that groaned in the cold. The base was filled with people from many countries, climatologists, geologists, and technicians who came to study the ice and its secrets. Among them was Dr. Miriam Voss, the lead scientist. She was strong-minded, with a calm voice that often silenced arguments. She believed that the Arctic held something waiting to be found, something beyond the simple studies of climate or ancient ice layers. One day, as her team drilled deep into the glacier to study temperature shifts, the machines began to pick up strange readings. The sensors screamed with confusion. Energy signals pulsed from deep within the ice like a heartbeat that had been frozen in time. The scientists checked and rechecked their data. No natural source could explain what they saw. Metal, one of the geologists whispered, staring at the screen. There's something buried down there. Something big. For weeks they drilled deeper. Every meter revealed more signs. Odd magnetic fields, unnatural structures, and shapes too perfect to belong to rocks. At last their machines touched something solid. When the ice was cleared away, a curved surface of black metal shone under their floodlights. It was smooth, unbroken, and impossibly strong. The team stood in silence. No one said the word ship, but everyone thought it. As news spread, governments became interested. Soon, soldiers guarded the site and researchers were ordered to work under strict rules. They discovered that the buried object was enormous, larger than any submarine or craft made by humans. Its surface was marked with faint glowing lines like veins of light running across its body. No drills could pierce it, no scanners could fully read it, and no amount of heat could melt the thick ice faster. The object, whatever it was, seemed to be waiting. Months turned into years. The excitement faded and politics took over. Arguments about ownership dragged on in meetings far away from the ice. Some said it belonged to the world. Others claimed it belonged to the nation whose territory it was found under. Nothing was agreed upon. In the end, the site was sealed, guards were reduced, and the mystery was buried again by snow. The alien object, forgotten by many, slept in silence. Years later, a man named Ethan Hale arrived at Station Argus. Ethan was not a scientist. He was a mechanic, a man who worked with machines all his life. He came from a small town where broken cars and old engines were left in his care, and he had a gift for fixing what others called useless junk. He did not come to the Arctic for discovery or fame. He came for work. The station needed someone who could keep the generators alive, repair heaters, and make sure that when the cold bit hard, the lights would still burn. Ethan was quiet, modest, and carried his tools with care. While others wrote papers and studied samples, he tightened bolts and replaced wires. He thought of himself as an invisible helper, someone who kept the station breathing while no one noticed. But Ethan was also curious. When he heard whispers about something buried in the ice, a giant object that no one could explain, he felt a spark inside. He had grown up fixing old tractors and motorcycles, but the idea of something so strange, something not made by human hands, filled him with wonder. One evening, the wind outside roared louder than usual. Snow piled against the walls of Station Argus, and the generators groaned under the strain. Ethan was called to check the drills near the old excavation site. Most of the scientists had long stopped working there, but the drills still monitored ice movements. He walked through the snow tunnels with his toolkit, his boots sinking into the powder. The air was sharp in his lungs, and his breath turned to crystals that floated in the wind. At last he reached the cavern. The floodlights still shone weakly, casting pale circles on the ice walls. Ethan bent down and opened the control box of the drill. Wires had frozen and cracked. He muttered to himself, replacing them with quick hands. He did not notice at first that the drill head had struck something solid again. When he finally looked up, his eyes widened. The ice wall before him was breaking apart. The machine had uncovered more of the strange black surface. For the first time, Ethan saw it with his own eyes, not just in old photographs. It was beautiful and frightening. The metal curved like the side of a massive whale, smooth and untouched by time. Thin lines of light pulsed across it as if alive. Driven by something he could not explain, Ethan stepped closer. He brushed away frost with his glove, revealing a small circle etched into the surface. It was unlike the rest, almost like a hatch. He placed his hand against it. To his shock, the circle glowed brighter. A faint vibration ran through the metal as if it was responding to him. The ice around the circle cracked with a sharp sound. Ethan stumbled back, his heart racing. The glowing lines expanded, forming a pattern, and then with a deep hum, the surface opened. A thin mist poured out as ancient air escaped. A narrow passage revealed itself, leading into darkness. Ethan stared, his mouth dry. He should have called the station, should have reported it immediately. But something stronger pulled at him, curiosity. He was a man who fixed machines, and here was the greatest machine he had ever seen waiting silently for someone to notice. Taking a deep breath, Ethan stepped forward into the unknown. Inside, the air was cold, but breathable. The walls shimmered faintly, made of metal that seemed alive with shifting patterns. His footsteps echoed small against the vast silence. For a long time, no one had walked these halls. Ethan touched the walls and felt warmth beneath the surface. Strange symbols glowed at his touch, spreading light along the corridor. It was like the ship was waking up, slowly responding to his presence. He reached a chamber filled with tall structures, machines that looked broken, frozen by time. Tubes hung loose, panels cracked, and a thick layer of frost covered everything. It was not so different from the old engines he had fixed all his life. Wires, coils, circuits, only larger, stranger, and more advanced. Something inside Ethan stirred. He did not fully understand what he was looking at, but he knew it was not dead. It only needed someone to care for it, to bring it back. He did not know that with every step, with every touch, the ship was slowly awakening. When Ethan finally left the chamber, the glowing lines on the walls pulsed like a heartbeat. The sound of the wind outside was drowned by the low hum of machines coming to life. The alien ship, frozen for centuries, had been waiting for a human hand, and now that hand had arrived. The night in the Arctic was long and heavy, with darkness stretching endlessly over the white land. Inside Station Argus, most of the scientists slept, their bodies wrapped in heavy blankets while the heaters fought against the bitter cold. Only a few lights glowed in the hallways, and the sound of the wind outside was like a ghost pressing against the walls. But far beneath the ice, Ethan Hale was wide awake. His heart still raced from what he had seen. The hatch, the corridor, the glowing lines on the walls. He told himself he would only look for a moment, that he would not go too far. Yet here he was, standing in a chamber no human had ever entered before. The air inside the alien vessel was dry, old, and filled with the faint scent of metal. His boots crunched against frost that had built up over centuries. The walls were alive with faint light, like veins carrying energy through the ship's body. Ethan's breath came in clouds, but the temperature inside was strangely warmer than the outside. He raised his flashlight and looked at the strange machines around him. Some were tall as towers, others small like control panels. Pipes coiled across the floor, and strange crystal-like objects hung from the ceiling, frozen and cracked. He did not understand their purpose, but something about them reminded him of engines and generators. Ethan was no scientist. He had never studied alien languages or space theories, but he had spent his whole life fixing broken machines. He saw the ship not as a mystery, but as something broken that wanted to work again. He set down his toolkit. His fingers ran along a cracked panel, brushing away the frost. When he tapped it lightly, the surface flickered with pale light. Strange symbols moved across it like waves. He could not read them, yet somehow he felt they were instructions, warnings, or perhaps a language reaching out to him. "Easy there," Ethan whispered to himself, as if speaking to an old engine. "Let's see what you need." The more he touched, the more the ship responded. The symbols brightened, spreading light down the corridor. A low hum filled the chamber, deep and steady, like a giant machine slowly waking from a long sleep. Ethan's hands shook. He should have stopped. He should have called Dr. Voss and the others. But curiosity had him in its grip. He felt like a boy again, taking apart a broken radio just to see how it worked. Only now, the radio was a ship older than his entire civilization. He opened one of the broken panels. Inside were coils and threads unlike any wires he had ever seen. They shimmered faintly, though many were snapped or frozen. With careful fingers, he reached into his bag and pulled out pliers, a screwdriver, and tape. His tools looked so simple, almost laughable against the alien technology. But when he reconnected two snapped coils, the lights inside the chamber pulsed brighter. "Ha!" he breathed. "Still works." It was madness. He was repairing a machine from another world with human tools. Yet the ship seemed to accept it. With every fix, the hum grew stronger, as though the ship was grateful for his help. Hours passed. Ethan did not notice how much time slipped by. The ship drew him deeper, guiding him with glowing pathways. He found himself in what looked like a central chamber. At its heart was a tall pillar covered in symbols and lights. It pulsed faintly like a heartbeat. He placed his hand against it. Instantly, the pillar lit up. A burst of light filled the chamber, and Ethan stumbled back. Shapes and figures appeared in the air, holograms. He gasped as he saw stars, galaxies, and swirling maps that stretched far beyond anything he had ever imagined. Planets glowed, and lines of travel connected them like a great web. Among the stars, Ethan saw images of beings. Tall, slender, with eyes like glowing crystals. They wore robes of light, and their faces were filled with both sadness and pride. They were not human, but their gestures, their movements felt strangely familiar. Then the holograms changed. The beings were shown running, fleeing across space as fire consumed their worlds. Enormous dark shapes followed them, shadows with teeth of flame and claws of destruction. Ethan did not understand who they were, but he felt the terror in the images. Finally, a message appeared. The ship's strange voice filled the chamber. It spoke in a language he did not know, yet somehow he understood pieces of it. "If you awaken us, you awaken them too." The words chilled him. He stepped back, heart pounding. What had he done? By repairing the broken wires, by touching the controls, had he already awakened something dangerous? The ship answered his fear with action. From the top of the pillar, a burst of light shot upward, passing through the ceiling, through the ice, and into the sky above. It was a beacon, a signal stretching across space. No, Ethan muttered, gripping his head. That wasn't supposed to happen. He ran back down the corridor, his boots echoing. But the ship continued to wake, light spreading through every hall, doors unlocking with deep groans and energy pulsing through veins of metal. By the time Ethan stumbled out of the hatch, the cavern was glowing with pale blue light. The guards at the station would see it. The scientists would see it. And soon the whole world would know the ship was alive again. At dawn, the station erupted into chaos. Scientists rushed to the excavation site, their voices filled with shock. Soldiers demanded answers, their radios crackling with urgent orders. Dr. Miriam Voss stood at the edge of the cavern, staring at the glowing ship with wide eyes. "It's awake," she whispered. When she saw Ethan, covered in frost, standing near the open hatch, her eyes narrowed. "What did you do?" "I just fixed a few wires," Ethan stammered. "You what?" Her voice was sharp, filled with disbelief. "Do you realize what this means? That ship has been silent for centuries. And now," she turned back to the vessel, which hummed like a sleeping giant opening its eyes. Ethan could not explain it. He did not even fully understand it himself. But something in his chest told him this was only the beginning. That night, while the scientists argued and the soldiers tightened their guard, Ethan lay in his bunk, unable to sleep. The ship's message replayed in his mind. "If you awaken us, you awaken them too." He turned over, staring at the ceiling. What had he awakened? What was coming? And more importantly, why did he feel that the ship had chosen him? The alien vessel pulsed with light under the ice, alive again for the first time in centuries. The world above was only beginning to understand the truth. But somewhere, far beyond the stars, something else had heard the beacon. Something that had been waiting. The Arctic sky was calm and endless, filled with pale stars that glittered above the frozen land. Yet deep below the ice, something powerful had awakened. The alien ship glowed faintly in its cavern, light pulsing across its surface like veins carrying life. The hum that echoed from within was no longer faint. It was steady, alive, and waiting. Ethan Hale stood near the hatch he had opened, his breath short in the cold air. Around him, soldiers and scientists gathered with uneasy expressions. Floodlights shone down into the cavern, bouncing off the dark metal of the vessel. Dr. Miriam Voss paced back and forth, her hands behind her back. She was a woman of reason, but tonight her face was pale with wonder and fear. "We studied this ship for years," she said, her voice sharp. "We tried everything. Heat, lasers, drills. Nothing. But you," she pointed at Ethan, "you touch one panel and suddenly it answers. Why?" I didn't mean to, Ethan said quietly. I just fixed what looked broken. Miriam's eyes narrowed. It responded to you, not to us. That means something. Before Ethan could reply, the ship itself spoke. A low vibration spread through the cavern, followed by a voice that was not a voice. It was a strange sound, layered and echoing like 100 whispers blending together. The words came in an alien tongue, but in Ethan's mind they formed into meaning. The Keeper has returned. The vessel breathes once more. Ethan's skin prickled. He looked around, but no one else reacted the same way. The soldiers shifted uneasily, but their faces showed only confusion. Miriam frowned. What did it say? She asked. Ethan swallowed. It called me the Keeper. Murmurs rose among the scientists. Soldiers lifted their rifles, nervous and unsure. The cavern felt smaller, as though the ship's presence filled every corner. Later that night, Ethan was taken back into the station for questioning. Miriam sat across from him, her eyes burning with curiosity. Tell me everything, she said. Every detail. What you saw, what you touched, what you heard. Ethan explained slowly. How he had entered, how the walls glowed when he touched them, how broken parts seemed to come alive under his repairs, and finally, how the holograms showed stars, strange beings, and a warning. What warning? Miriam asked quickly. Ethan hesitated. The words still echoed in his mind. If you awaken us, you awaken them too. He decided to speak the truth. It said, if the ship wakes, something else will wake too. Something dangerous. The room went silent. Miriam leaned back in her chair, her fingers tapping against the table. So this wasn't just a discovery, she whispered. It was a signal. Days passed, but the ship did not return to silence. Instead, it continued to awaken. Every morning, the scientists found new sections glowing. Doors opened deeper into its interior. Corridors lit up and the low hum grew louder. Ethan was brought inside again and again, asked to touch panels, asked to repair coils. He tried to refuse, but the ship seemed to recognize only him. When he placed his hands on the controls, the symbols glowed brighter, the machines hummed stronger. One afternoon, he found himself standing before the great central pillar once more. Miriam and 2 other scientists watched carefully as he touched its surface. Instantly, light exploded into the chamber, filling the air with holographic images. This time, the stars looked closer, sharper. A map unfolded before them. Miriam gasped as she recognized Earth, a small blue dot in the center. Around it stretched lines, routes, and pathways leading far into the galaxy. And then the enemy appeared again, shadows spreading like claws across the stars. A fleet of dark shapes that blotted out the light of suns. The alien voice returned, echoing inside Ethan's mind. They hunted us. They burned our worlds. They will follow the signal. Prepare. Ethan clenched his fists. His chest felt heavy. The scientists whispered nervously, but he could not take his eyes off the vision. Prepare for what? He asked aloud. The answer came, clear and sharp. For war. When the images vanished, silence filled the chamber. Miriam stared at Ethan, her face pale. If this is real, if that signal truly went out into space. They're coming, Ethan finished. His voice was low, heavy with dread. The soldiers outside grew more restless with each passing day. Their commanders demanded answers. Governments far away sent urgent messages. What had started as a forgotten mystery in the ice had now become the center of the world's attention. Some wanted the ship destroyed, fearing it would bring danger. Others wanted it captured, hoping to steal its secrets. But the ship allowed no one else to touch its core, only Ethan. One night, as the storm outside shook the walls of the station, Ethan returned to the ship alone. He told himself he only wanted to look, to try and understand. But deep down, he felt drawn, as though the ship itself called for him. Inside, the lights guided him deeper, to a chamber he had never seen before. At its center was a tall structure like a chair, surrounded by floating crystals of light. He stepped closer and the voice filled his mind again. You are chosen. You repaired what was broken. You carry the hands of the Keeper. This vessel answers to you. Ethan shook his head. I'm just a mechanic. I fix engines. I'm no chosen one. A ship is but a machine. Machines need hands to heal them. You are the hands. You are the Keeper now. He felt a pull, and before he could resist, the crystals floated around him, wrapping him in light. His mind filled with flashes of knowledge. How to guide the ship, how to command its systems. Not everything was clear, but enough to make him realize one truth. The ship had not just awakened. It was ready to fly again. The next morning, Miriam found Ethan pale and shaken. He told her what had happened, his voice trembling. She listened silently, her face unreadable. "If what you say is true," she said at last, "then humanity has just inherited a starship." Ethan looked at her, his eyes uncertain, or a grave. Far above Earth, beyond the reach of human eyes, something stirred. The beacon had traveled far, its signal spreading like ripples through the galaxy. In the darkness of space, massive ships turned slowly toward the source. Their hulls were jagged, their shapes twisted, their presence like shadows come alive. They had hunted once before, and they would hunt again, and now their prey had called out to them once more. Ethan did not know yet how close the danger was. He only knew that the ship trusted him, and that frightened him more than anything. For the first time in his life, a mechanic who had once fixed small engines stood at the edge of something far greater. The alien ship had chosen him, and somewhere in the cold depths of space the enemy had heard the call. The storm above Station Argus passed, but the tension inside the research base grew heavier with each new day. The alien ship beneath the ice no longer lay silent. Its humming could be felt through the ground, like the steady beat of a heart too big for the world. Governments across the globe sent messages, demanding updates. Military leaders argued with scientists, while news outlets tried to break through the walls of secrecy. Everyone wanted control of the ship, but no one truly understood it. And in the center of it all was Ethan Hale. He sat in the mess hall, staring at his untouched food. Around him, soldiers whispered, and scientists glanced at him as if he carried a dangerous secret. He was just a mechanic, a man who had come to fix heaters and generators. Yet somehow the ship had chosen him. Dr. Miriam Voss sat across from him. Her dark hair was tied back, and her sharp eyes studied him carefully. "You cannot hide from this, Ethan," she said softly. "You touched the ship, you awakened it, and now it listens only to you. Whether you like it or not, you're at the center of this." Ethan rubbed his face with his hands. "I don't want to be. I don't even understand half of what's happening. I just fixed some broken wires. That's all." "But it was enough," Miriam replied. "Machines speak their own language, and somehow you spoke it. The ship thinks you're its keeper. That gives you a power no one else has." Ethan shook his head. "It's not power. It's a burden. Did you hear what it said? The enemy will come." That signal. It went out into space. We don't know how far or how fast, but something's coming. Miriam leaned closer, her voice dropping to a whisper. "That's why we need you. If danger is coming, we have only one weapon to face it, the ship. And you're the only one who can use it." The next day, representatives from several nations arrived at Station Argus. They came in heavy aircraft that landed on the frozen airstrip, their engines roaring through the icy winds. Soldiers in thick coats escorted officials inside, their boots crunching against snow. The conference room was crowded with uniforms and stern faces. Ethan stood near the wall, uncomfortable in his simple work clothes. Miriam stood beside him, ready to defend the science, while commanders and leaders argued around the table. One official slammed his hand on the table. "That ship is a threat. We don't know what it can do. For all we know, it could explode or bring invaders straight to our planet. I say we bury it again and leave it under the ice." Another voice rose. "Nonsense. This is the greatest discovery in human history. With its technology, we could advance 100 years in a single step. Imagine what it could do for energy, for travel, for medicine. This is not a threat, it is an opportunity." A general scowled. "Opportunity or not, it's a weapon. And weapons must be controlled. If we don't take command of it, others will. We cannot afford weakness." The room filled with arguments, words colliding like storms. Some wanted to shut the ship down, others wanted to study it, and many wanted to claim it for their own nations. Finally, Miriam stood. Her calm voice cut through the noise. "You're all missing the point. The ship is not listening to you. It is listening to him." She gestured to Ethan. Dozens of eyes turned toward him. Ethan felt the weight of their stares. He cleared his throat nervously. "I'm no leader. I don't know about politics or science or war. But I know machines. And I know this one is alive. It's waiting for something. And it told me one thing clearly. The enemy is coming." Silence filled the room. "If we bury it," Ethan continued, "that won't stop them. If we fight each other over it, We'll be weaker when they arrive. The only chance we have is to learn how to use it. Together. The room did not erupt again, but the tension remained. After the meeting, soldiers and scientists filled the corridors with hurried steps and hushed voices. Ethan walked alone outside into the frozen air. The wind cut across his face, sharp and cold, but the silence gave him peace. He looked up at the night sky. The stars were clear and endless. Somewhere out there, something had heard the signal. He wondered what kind of beings they were, what kind of power they carried. Were they already on their way? The ship's hum echoed faintly under his boots. He realized he could feel it even here above the ice. It was alive and it was waiting for him. The following week, preparations began. A team of chosen scientists and engineers, along with a unit of soldiers, were allowed inside the ship under Ethan's guidance. They wore heavy suits and carried tools, but nothing they did made the ship respond. Only when Ethan touched the controls did the systems awaken. He led them through the corridors, showing them what he had discovered: the glowing panels, the central pillar, the star maps. The scientists recorded everything, filling notebooks and computers with symbols they did not yet understand. Miriam spoke softly to Ethan as they walked. "You're not just a guide. You're a bridge. You stand between this ship and the rest of us. It trusts you. That means humanity must trust you too." Ethan frowned. "I never asked for that." "True," Miriam said. "But sometimes history doesn't ask. It simply places people where they need to be." Then, one evening, the ship revealed something new. As Ethan touched the central pillar, the holograms expanded again. But this time, instead of maps of stars, it showed Earth. The planet turned slowly, glowing blue and white. Symbols spread across it, highlighting cities, seas, and skies. The alien voice filled his mind once more. "This vessel will protect, but it must move. It cannot hide beneath ice. It must fly." Ethan's chest tightened. The ship was telling him it was ready to leave the ground. The others in the chamber gasped as the hologram shifted. The ship's engines, still frozen and cracked, were displayed in glowing detail. Some parts flashed red, marked as damaged. Others shone green, ready for use. "It wants you to repair it," Miriam whispered. Ethan nodded slowly. He understood the message. The ship was giving him instructions, repairs that needed to be made, systems that needed to be restored. If he could fix them, the vessel would be able to break free of the ice and rise into the sky. The thought was terrifying. That night, Ethan could not sleep. He sat by the small window of his cabin, watching the snow drift across the dark horizon. His hands shook as he held a small wrench, the tool that had always been his comfort. He remembered fixing his first engine as a boy, the pride he felt when the machine came alive under his hands. But this was different. This was not a tractor or a generator. This was a starship, a machine that could decide the fate of the entire world. He whispered into the empty room. "Why me?" The ship did not answer, but deep in his chest he felt the hum once more, steady and patient. Meanwhile, far beyond Earth, the signal traveled through the black ocean of space, and out in that darkness shadows moved. A fleet of monstrous ships stirred, their hulls jagged and sharp, their cores burning with hungry light. They had hunted once before, and the memory of that hunt still lingered. Now a new prey had called them, and they were coming. Ethan woke the next morning with resolve. If the enemy was coming, humanity had only one chance, the ship. And if the ship trusted him, then he would not run from it. He would fix it just as he had fixed every broken machine in his life. But this time he would not fix it alone. It was time for humanity to choose. The Arctic dawn was quiet, almost peaceful, but the tension inside Station Argus was electric. The alien ship beneath the ice hummed with energy, its massive hull glowing faintly in the pale light. For the first time, humanity was about to see what it could do. Ethan Hale stood at the entrance of the ship's central chamber, his hands gripping the controls. Around him, the team of scientists, engineers, and soldiers moved with a mixture of excitement and fear. Each person knew the risks. This was no ordinary vessel. It had been dormant for centuries, frozen beneath the ice, and now it was alive, and listening only to him. Dr. Miriam Voss stepped forward. "Are you sure it's ready?" she asked, her voice tight with worry. Ethan nodded slowly. "I've repaired the engines, reconnected the systems, and calibrated the energy cores. It's ready, but it's still alive. That means it will respond to our intentions." If we panic, it might reject us. If we're steady, it will work with us. The soldiers exchanged nervous glances. Some adjusted their helmets, others checked their equipment. None of them had been trained for this. No human had ever been in command of an alien starship before. Ethan took a deep breath. Let's do this. Step inside, stay calm, and trust me. Inside the ship, the corridors pulsed with soft light. Symbols that had seemed alien now glowed steadily, as though recognizing him as the keeper. The engines throbbed beneath the floor, vibrating faintly, ready to unleash centuries of stored energy. The central chamber opened up before them like a cathedral. At its heart was the pilot's seat, surrounded by floating holographic displays that projected stars, planets, and alien symbols. Ethan stepped forward and touched the main console. The ship responded instantly. Lights raced along the walls, and the hum deepened, growing louder and steady like a heartbeat. Everyone stay alert, Ethan said. We're going to lift off in 3, 2, 1. He pressed the final sequence, and the engines roared to life. The ice beneath the ship trembled as the vessel shifted slightly, rising slowly from its frozen bed. For a moment, time seemed to stop. The humans inside held their breath. Outside, the Arctic landscape stretched endlessly, snow shimmering in the early sunlight. Then, with a deep resonating hum, the alien ship broke free of the ice. The sound echoed across the frozen plains, carrying with it the promise of something incredible. The liftoff was smoother than anyone expected. The ship rose steadily, its hull slicing through the morning sky. The soldiers who had never seen a starship before gasped in awe. Miriam's eyes shone with pride, tinged with fear. Ethan's hands moved quickly across the controls, guided by intuition, training, and the subtle instructions of the ship itself. Symbols lit up in sequence. Energy flowed through channels he had repaired, and the engines thrummed with power far beyond human design. Altitude is stable, Ethan reported. We're clear of the ice now. Space. The crew held tight as the vessel climbed higher and higher. The air grew thinner, the temperature colder, but inside the ship, the environment was perfect. It adapted to them, responding to life, to presence, to intention. Outside, the earth fell away beneath them. The frozen Arctic gave way to oceans and continents. The planet glowed beneath the alien light of the ship, a small blue gem surrounded by the vast blackness of space. As they reached orbit, Ethan activated the navigation system. The holograms expanded to show distant stars, galaxies, and the alien fleet that had once destroyed the ship's creators. They're coming, Ethan said, his voice steady but low. The ones who destroyed this vessel. They heard the signal. They're heading this way. Miriam stepped beside him. How long do we have? Not long, Ethan replied. Hours, maybe less. But we have something they do not. What's that? A soldier asked. Ethan smiled faintly. Us, humans, and this ship. The crew exchanged glances, unsure if he was joking, but Ethan was serious. The vessel responded to him, yes, but it also responded to human courage, human creativity, human determination. That was something no enemy could predict. The first tests in orbit were tense. The ship's alien systems were unfamiliar, and even with guidance, each movement required precision. Ethan guided it carefully through small maneuvers, testing speed, energy output, and shields that shimmered like thin glass around the hull. The scientist recorded everything. Astonished at the technology they had once only dreamed of, Miriam leaned close, her hand brushing against a console. It's incredible, she whispered. Ethan, you did this. We're in space because of you. Ethan shook his head. No, we did this, all of us. The ship trusted me, yes, but we all brought it here together. That's what makes it ours. For the first time, a sense of unity spread through the team. It wasn't about nations or politics or personal ambition. It was about humanity itself, its courage, its curiosity, its willingness to fight for survival. Far away, in the darkness beyond the solar system, the enemy fleet approached. Massive shapes with jagged hulls moved silently, their engines glowing faintly. Centuries ago, they had destroyed the alien civilization that built this ship. Now, drawn by the signal Ethan had unknowingly activated, they were coming for Earth. Inside the alien vessel, the crew watched the stars stretch before them. Ethan's hands hovered over the controls, feeling the pulse of the ship. It was alive, and it was waiting for him to make the first move. Prepare for battle, Ethan said quietly. We won't run. We'll face them. The ship's lights brightened in response, like a nod. Energy flowed through its hull, shields expanding, weapon systems lighting up faintly along the outer edges. "This is it," Ethan said. "Our first test as humans in space. Let's show them what we can do." The vessel moved faster than anything the crew had seen. It twisted, turned, and surged forward with incredible speed, guided by Ethan and the ship's own intelligence. For the first time, humanity was not vulnerable. They had a tool, yes, but more importantly, they had ingenuity, courage, and the will to survive. As they approached the first signals of the enemy fleet, the ship's sensors highlighted hundreds of targets. Ethan steered carefully, keeping the vessel between Earth and the approaching threat. The crew held their positions, ready to react. Then, with a surge of energy, the ship accelerated, breaking through the enemy's outer defenses with shields that shimmered like glass and engines that burned with alien power. Miriam looked at Ethan in awe. "You're controlling it." "And it's responding," Ethan nodded. "It trusts humans. It trusts us because we fight together. That's something no enemy can destroy." The battle had begun, though no shots had been fired yet. The enemy fleet moved with precision, but they had never faced a human mind working in harmony with a machine of such power. The ship twisted, accelerated, and dodged, guiding them through space with agility no human craft could match. Ethan realized something then. This was more than a battle. It was a statement. Humanity was no longer alone, no longer weak, no longer bound to a single world. They had taken the first step into the stars, and they would fight for their place. The alien ship, once frozen for centuries, now soared through space, alive again. And humanity, guided by one simple mechanic who had fixed broken engines all his life, had become something greater than it had ever imagined. Hours later, the Earth was still below, glowing blue and white in the darkness of space. The enemy fleet had been pushed back, cautious after witnessing the ship's power. Ethan looked at his crew, their faces tired but determined. "We did it," Miriam whispered. Ethan shook his head. "This is just the beginning. They'll come again. But now, we're ready." The alien ship hummed around them, steady, alive, and loyal. It had chosen humans, and in return they had chosen to stand together. And so, humanity's first starship sailed through space, not as a weapon of destruction, but as a symbol of hope, courage, and the determination to survive. The stars stretched endlessly before them, full of danger and wonder, and the humans aboard knew that they were no longer just passengers. They were challengers, explorers, and defenders of their world. Ethan placed his hand on the console. "Let's see what's out there," he said, and the ship answered, pulsing with light, and the stars welcomed the humans who dared to rise.